There's a particular kind of person who, when things get hard, goes quiet. Not cold, not angry, not dramatic, just quiet. They stop texting back as fast. They give shorter answers. They smile, but something behind the eyes has shifted, and if you've ever been on the receiving end of that silence, you know how loud it actually is. But if you are that person, you already know this isn't about punishing anyone. It's something else entirely. And today we're going to name it. From the outside, going quiet looks like withdrawal, like shutting down, like walls going up. People assume it means anger or indifference or manipulation. But here's what's actually happening underneath. The person who goes quiet is almost never doing it consciously. They're not sitting in a room somewhere thinking, I'll show them. I'll say nothing. Something much more automatic is occurring. The nervous system has reached a threshold, and it has done what nervous systems do when they reach that threshold. It has prioritized survival over communication. This isn't a character flaw. This is biology. Dr. John Gottman, one of the most published researchers in relationship psychology, spent over 40 years studying how people communicate under stress. His findings were published across multiple peer-reviewed journals, including the Journal of Marriage and Family Therapy. What he found was a pattern he called stonewalling, one of what he identified as the 4 horsemen of relationship breakdown, but not in the way most people use that word. Gottman's research showed that when people go quiet during conflict, their heart rate has often already exceeded 100 beats per minute. Their body is in full physiological stress response, flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. The brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, has effectively taken the prefrontal cortex offline. The part of your brain responsible for language, empathy, and rational thought goes dark. Words stop working. Not because the person is choosing silence, but because the system that produces words is overwhelmed. Gottman called this flooding. And the silence that follows isn't withdrawal. It's the mind's emergency brake. But why are some people more prone to this than others? Why do some people raise their voice when overwhelmed, while others disappear into silence? The answer goes back further than you might expect. John Bowlby's landmark attachment theory, first published in his 1969 work, Attachment and Loss, proposed that the bonds formed in early childhood become the internal blueprint for how we navigate all relationships throughout our lives. Mary Ainsworth built on this foundation through her strange situation experiments. Studies that identified how children raised in unpredictable or emotionally inconsistent environments developed distinct coping strategies. Ainsworth's research, published in Patterns of Attachment in 1978, found that children whose emotional expressions were met with rejection or inconsistency learned to suppress those expressions entirely, not as a decision, as a survival strategy. And survival strategies don't disappear when childhood ends. They follow us. They show up in our relationships, our friendships, our workplaces. Every time the environment feels unpredictable or emotionally unsafe, the old pattern activates. Go quiet, go internal, wait for the storm to pass. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, psychiatrist and author of The Body Keeps the Score, describes this as somatic memory, the body's encoded response to past threat. His research demonstrates that the nervous system does not distinguish between a childhood argument and an adult conflict. It responds the same way, with the same learned protection: silence. Here's what most people misunderstand about the person who goes quiet. They assume the silence means nothing is happening. The opposite is true. Inside, the quiet person is experiencing an almost overwhelming internal world. They are processing, replaying, feeling deeply. Research from the field of sensory processing sensitivity, pioneered by psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron and published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 1997, identified that approximately 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that processes emotional and sensory information more deeply than others. Aron's research, conducted across 7 independent studies at the State University of New York at Stony Brook, found that highly sensitive individuals do not process less. They process significantly more. What looks like nothing on the outside is everything on the inside. The quiet person isn't checked out. They're so checked in they've had to stop the external output entirely just to manage the internal one. Think of it like a computer running too many programs at once. It doesn't crash dramatically, it just stops responding to new inputs while it works through what's already there. This is why pushing a quiet person to talk in the moment rarely works. The system isn't ready. Forcing output before the processing is complete doesn't speed things up. It restarts the overwhelm. The most painful part of this pattern isn't the silence itself, it's how the silence gets interpreted. The person on the outside reads it as, they don't care, they're punishing me, they've given up. And so they push harder, or they go cold themselves, or they fill the silence with their own anxiety, which triggers the quiet person further, which deepens the silence, which confirms the fear for the person on the outside. It's a loop. Gottman's research identified this as the pursuer-withdrawer cycle, one of the most common patterns preceding relationship breakdown across the thousands of couples studied in his laboratory over 4 decades. Nobody is the villain in this pattern. The quiet person isn't trying to cause pain. The person on the outside isn't wrong to feel shut out. They are two nervous systems, speaking completely different languages, each responding to a version of the situation filtered through their own history. And without understanding, without someone naming what's actually happening, the loop continues. So what actually helps? For the person who goes quiet, the first step is recognizing the pattern as a pattern, not a personality trait, not a flaw, a learned response, and learned responses can be updated. Research on nervous system regulation, particularly the polyvagal theory developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, published in the Journal of Psychophysiology, shows that the autonomic nervous system moves through distinct states in response to perceived safety and threat. Communication is only accessible from a state of physiological safety, which means the fastest path back to connection is regulation first, not talking through it, regulating first, slow breathing, physical space, time. Gottman's own research confirmed this. Couples who took a 20-minute break during flooding and engaged in genuinely calming activity showed significantly lower heart rates and more productive conversation when they returned. The window for productive conversation opens again only after the nervous system has come back online. For the person on the outside, the most effective thing is almost counterintuitive. Don't fill the silence. Don't pursue. Don't interpret. Simply make the environment feel safe enough for re-entry. A calm presence. A simple acknowledgement. I'm here when you're ready. That's it. Because the quiet person isn't gone. They're just waiting to feel safe enough to come back. People who go quiet have often spent years being misunderstood, told they're too cold, too distant, too hard to reach. But what they actually are is someone whose nervous system learned a long time ago that silence was the safest place to go. And the fact that they're still here, still trying, still showing up in the quiet ways they know how, says more about their strength than any words could. If this described you,